Hello, welcome back to All for United WSC. We are in game week 5. How long have we been waiting for this? As you know, if you follow the channel, we've been doing shows for, I don't even know how many shows we've done. I'd like to actually, someone get that stat. Who's a stat put? Charlie, get the stat. How many shows we've done out since the last game of the season to now? Because it's felt like a long time coming, but we're finally here. We are in game week, so we've got the season to look forward to now. We're going to talk about expectations. Have they changed since seeing some of the transfer? We're going to talk about targets for the season, individual and as a team. And this whole top 3 debate, is it top 3 or bust? Is it a failure if we don't get top 3, and all of those things in between? So I'm joined by the usual Monday, I was going to say compadres then, but that's not really a thing anymore, is it? But Charlie and Barry anyway. And we've also got Barry's twin, Mark, alongside us as well, down there on the bottom row. So brilliant panel to talk us through. Make sure you get your comments and your thoughts in throughout the next hour of the show. I want to actually dive straight in with a question. When I was thinking of a question for this show, I was thinking, where can I start? What's the starting point for this kind of show? And I want to come to each of you first. Charlie, I'll come to you first in terms of, we're coming to the end of the transfer window now, so it shuts on Thursday. I'd be surprised if there's any more. We don't know. There might be an outgoing or two, but we'll wait and see on that one. Have your expectations changed from the start of the window to now after seeing the kind of window that we've had?
So I think we will be more competitive this year. I think with the 3 teams we're battling against to try and get that elusive Champions League place in the table. Just going to talk before, haven't we, about the number of options we now have and the different ways we could potentially set up and play depending on the personnel that we're facing and the sort of the changes that can happen within a game when you need to make something happen. So yes, my expectations have changed. I think we'll be more competitive. I hope we get top 3. Whether we will, that's maybe a point we're going to discuss a little bit later on. But yes, I expect us to be much more competitive. I also kind of think with the changes that we've made, we're going to hopefully get better results against some of those sides who tend to sit in against us, and perhaps at the back end of the season we didn't beat. Had we had more options, we might have done.
No, 100%, Barry. And then Mark, obviously following after this, have your expectations changed after seeing the window that we've had?
No, I don't think they have specifically. The brief for me has always been just don't go backwards. So as long as we're finishing top 4, that is, I think, reasonable. I know that won't go down well in general view, because 4th might not be considered to be the most wonderful of positions, but I think as long as we're competitive, as long as we're doing well in some of these matches, I think for me, the minimum progression really is to see how we perform now against some of these bigger teams, so-called bigger teams, the City, the Arsenal and the Chelsea. I'd like to see us, really getting in there and having some more competitive matches, because we lost a few games now to City. We obviously had the Conti Cup win over Arsenal, but we had the dodgy 1-1 that we shouldn't really have drawn. And of course, Chelsea, we bossed them for a half and couldn't see the second half out because they just sort of overwhelmed us. And of course, Sam Kerr. So I don't really think 4th would be a failure, providing we are seeing some sort of progression against those teams and some competition in those matches. If we finish 4th and we're still getting steamrolled and we're not as well as we could do, then maybe there's a question to be answered there. So, no, I wouldn't say my expectations have changed. I still want us to be top 4. I'd love us to be competitive in a cup. I'd be quite happy to win the Conti Cup, quite happy to get to the final even, just those sorts of progressions, really. I think we do deserve a day out for a final as well, something we can get ourselves excited about. So those are my expectations, really. I think it would be foolhardy to be throwing expectations of winning the title or things like that. So, yeah, that's not an expectation for me. So, no, hasn't changed too much.
It's always a difficult question when you ask about people's expectations, because everyone will always go in slightly different. Look, we're Man United. The expectation of every part of the fan base is we have to go for it. We have to win. However, realistically, we're not going to get through a season unbeaten. We're going to lose games. We're going to win games. I agree partly with what Barry said. Is 4th seen as a failure? Look, as long as there's a natural progression there within the team and you're seeing better performances against the top 3 sides, then I won't see fourth necessarily as a failure. If we're falling way behind those teams still, after the way we've strengthened, then yeah, it's absolutely a failure. But I think we've strengthened well. We've brought in some very good players. Some of Maya Le Tissier is the one that's going to stand out for a lot of people, who has got the talent. And we've brought in, Nikita Paris, we've brought in Adriana Leon, we've brought in all these players. So the squad is a lot stronger than it has been in recent years. So the expectation is obviously going to be higher. I just think we have to kind of be a bit realistic, because we're not the only team to have strengthened. Chelsea is strengthening, and we can all read the rumours about what Chelsea are planning to do within the next couple of days. So for me, let's see a natural progression week in, week out. And I think under Mark, we've kind of been seeing that all the time. He's progressing as a manager. So my expectations are we just take each game as it comes, we win, hopefully, and we go from there.
No, I'd agree on that. I think we're going to come back to talk about the Champions League spots in a bit more detail in a second, because there's a lot around that kind of top 3 spot, or top 4, as Sky Sports tweeted earlier, saying Man United are in a top 4 race in the WSL next season, which was a bit bizarre because that's where we are. And John Foster's kindly done the count. Our 60th show since the Chelsea match review. And how many times have we spoke about Jackie potentially leaving, the honour rumours and all kinds of things as well, which I'm sure is going to... Is Maya Le Tissier a centre-back or a full-back? I'm sure that's going to come up at some point in the next 12 months as well.
61 is the answer to your question there.
She can play anywhere. In answer to this question, Chris, is there plenty of parking at LSV? I don't know the official number. There's not loads. I don't know what is it. Just under 1,000, maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say exactly, but they're certainly not anywhere near the capacity of the stadium. There was a question a bit further on that I wanted to get to before we move on to the next point, and I've lost it. Anyone can answer this one from Mickey. With Zella now called up to the national team again, are we going to see a bigger impact in the club season from her to finally shut up her critics, or will it hinder her because she's not a main starter for the national team? Because we saw that a bit last season. She kept, and I always say that she's repeatedly picked for England, especially, obviously wasn't picked in the Euros, but repeatedly picked. So there must be a reason behind that. But she doesn't play as many minutes as some of the others. So that's an open question to anyone in terms of what Mickey's point is there.
I think if she ups her performance next season, I think that's incredible scenes, Jeff. Because from a deep lying midfield role, she got 5 goals and 5 assists in the league. So if she ups her performance, that can only be a good thing. When we're talking about the sorts of goals we want from our forwards, if she's getting more than 5 for the position she plays, that's really good. I also think, and in my personal opinion, that there's sometimes, like, emphasis is sometimes put on playing for the national team for certain players and not for others. So I don't think whether she's picked for the national team or not reduces the impact that she has on Man United. Because then you could say, couldn't you say, before Aoife had her injury, there were England camps, Aoife was playing brilliantly, she wasn't picked. Does that mean she's not good enough for us now? Hannah Blundell's not picked. Are we saying she's not very good now? Like, there's talk of Hansen going, not picked for Scotland, and people are scrabbling around crying about that. She doesn't get picked for Scotland. So I think in going back to what Mickey said, I think being around a coach like Sarina Wiegman can only be a good thing. Obviously, even if she's not playing loads of minutes, because she's such an incredible, well, she's the best coach in the world, isn't she? Officially, which is the right decision. So it can only be a good thing and a good experience. And I suppose she's playing, when she's in those camps, whether she gets minutes in games, she's playing with the players that Sarina perceives to be the ones that can take England, hopefully, to World Cup glory. So it can only be a good thing. But I don't think national team selection is the be all and end all. I wouldn't have thought.
And I think, just to tag on from that, it's honestly, no, I don't think it will shut up the critics, because I think some people just get a bee in their bonnet and then that's it. It doesn't matter what she does. I reckon she could go out there, score 50 goals, get us to the Champions League and win the title, maybe even score a back heel like Russo, and they'd still be like, nah, you could have scored 51. I'm not convinced. I'm really not. And I think that's just people. I don't think she should be doing it to shut people up. I think she should just be doing it because she wants to. And I was here last week. We sat here. We had a straight up argument, and there's a reason why I deliberately dug my heels in and wouldn't allow Hayley Ladd to be put in over Katie Zeller, and that's because she is vastly underrated by some sections of the fan base. And the fact that Serena Wiegman keeps going to her, like you've just said, shows that she is of good quality. So Charlie's quite right. It's not just about being picked for the international team. That's a marker, of course. But no, I don't necessarily think it will shut the critics up. But my hope is that she's just going to go out there and prove what she's already done. And I believe that she will, because let's be absolutely brutally honest, she's fantastic. And she should be, in my opinion, first name out of the three that goes on that team sheet in the midfield. So...
For me, I think the answer to the question is very simple. Mark Skinner picks her for a reason. That's it. He picks her for a reason. And since he's become manager, she's missed one game. One game. He's picked her for every single other game. And there's a reason for that. Now, I get people have their favourites. I get people think that she should be playing, people should be playing ahead of her. Football is all about an opinion. We can all have an opinion. However, the only opinion that matters is the manager's opinion. He's the one whose neck is literally on the line, because he will be the one who loses his job or maybe gets an extension of his contract because of how well he's done. He picks Katie for a reason. Now, Serena, for England, look, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge England fan. I'm not. I don't care about the internationals. I'm sorry, I really don't. And if that upsets people, then I apologise. But some of United's best ever players never got picked for their country. Steve Bruce, he never got a full England cap. He played for the England B team. She can be in and around the squad. That's fine. But for me, the only thing that matters is that she puts on the red shirt and she plays well in that red shirt for me. And you know what? If she gets her England career, you know what? We'll all applaud her. But I think the midfield is the place where, for England, if you look at the squad, I think it's kind of like United's midfield. We've got so many talented midfielders. I think she'll struggle right now to break away.
No, 100% agree with that. There's a lot of comments that have come in the last kind of 5 minutes. I'll try and get to as many as I can. And that's just very, very briefly. Jackie and Hansen are probably the two that you'd keep an eye on from a United outgoings point of view. I'd be very surprised if Jackie was to let go. Hansen's probably the one that you'd keep an eye on now, going out on loan. There was another question from John that I'm going to come back to in a second, because it's a nice segue into the next comment. Looking at here, plenty of people agreeing with you, Barry, as always, because there's always people agreeing with Barry on these things. Joe's put a comment in there. Katie's a club captain, enough said. She has nothing more to prove than others to assert. Yeah, I tend to agree with that as well. Ellie, exactly. Club before could. As long as she's doing it in a United shirt, I don't really care, to be honest, too much what she does or doesn't do for England. And Lanzell's saying there, going to be controlling games this season because we're going to dominate a lot of matches. That's a good shout as well. I'm going to scroll back up to John Foster's comment. Peter, I can see your question as well. I'm going to come back to that one as well. It kind of leads us into this whole kind of top three debate. And, I'm going to ask each of you whether it's a failure in a second, because I know obviously a lot of us will say no, but I want maybe specific reasons for that. John's asked the question, is our squad better than the top three? We've strengthened, I agree, but so have our rivals. Top four is our level, top four is our level, but top three is our target. It kind of ties into the first question in terms of signings. Now, I'll answer this very briefly from my point of view before I throw it over to Charlie first. No, I think it's better than... I think it's probably on level with Arsenal and City at the moment, purely when you look at squad morale. If you take everything into account, squad morale, team unity, whatever you want to throw in, I think it's on a level with those. I think Chelsea's a bit too far, especially if they get the couple of players that they're after at the moment. I think then they'll be a bit too far ahead. But I think we're on a level with those two teams. When you listen to the noises coming out, a lot of players don't really want to be at City and Arsenal at the moment. So I think we're not too far away, if not level with those. Charlie, I see you nodding your head. Do you agree with that? Is our squad better than the top three at the moment?
I think you have to ignore Chelsea. I think they're ridiculous, aren't they? When you look at the money they're spending, and why not? If we were throwing that sort of money around and getting those players in and winning everything, then we wouldn't be complaining about it. But I do feel like with Arsenal, City and us, I think it's much of a muchness, if you know what I mean. I think player for player, like I think we've got the best goalkeeper. If you look at our strongest 4 defenders, I wouldn't swap Arsenal's back line for ours. And I perhaps might not have said that a year or 2 ago. So I think if you forget Chelsea just for a moment, and that's not me not trying to be ambitious, but it's just me being realistic, let's be quite honest. I think there is no reason at all that we can't oust one of those 2 sides. I think there's no reason at all, particularly with the way we've strengthened. It was quite clear last year that Mark wasn't sort of looking. He was sort of looking at his bench and thinking, "There's not enough here to change it." I don't think that'll be the case this year. I really think we can compete, and we weren't steamrolled by the likes of Arsenal and City last year. I don't think so. I think it was Don earlier, ages ago. I don't know what someone called Don talked about the mentality. That's what I'll be looking at, particularly against City and Arsenal, is that mentality. I think Arsenal, we do go for it. I think we play really well against them. Don't think we have as much of a mental block against them because we have beaten them a couple of times recently. I think with City, it's the mental block. That's what we've got to get over. It's that mentality, because player for player, I think we're right in amongst it. I feel really positive about that.
Go on, who wants to follow that one up?
Yeah, I agree. Chelsea are on a different planet. I think we have to just let them be Chelsea and let them do what they're going to do. I think, look, if City lose Kira Walsh, which is the massive rumour that's going around, I think we're actually ahead of City, because without Kira Walsh, I think they're in potentially a lot of trouble. But that, you know, I think Arsenal, I think Charlie's right. Arsenal probably, you know, we play well against them. We play, you know, and they play well against us. In the game at Boreham Wood early in the year, I thought it was a really, really good game of football to watch. City, for me, like I said, if they lose Kira Walsh, I think they'll struggle. They've lost so much in the team this season. You know, Lucy Bronze, Georgia Stanway, potentially Kira Walsh, Ellen White's gone, Jill Scott's gone. It's hard to see if they're going to be able to pull up the roots like they have done. So I would say we were either just ahead of City and we're level with Arsenal.
I find it hard to disagree too much. I think, City will probably dislodge. I think last year we came close to finishing third, just above them, but we just had a little bobble towards the end, and they just about sneaked in over the line. It sort of reminded me a bit of when the Brownlee brothers were doing one of their triathlons, and one of them ended up getting a bit dizzy and started running towards the line, towards the side, and he didn't really know where they were going. And then we just sort of helped them across as if to go, hang on, you're supposed to finish here, not us. So I felt a little bit sorry for us on that one. But I think this year, I don't see any reason why we can't finish top 3. I'm a little bit more optimistic than others. I don't think the gap between Chelsea and ourselves is going to potentially be that huge. You know, like I say, I still remember last year there were opportunities for us to sort of narrow the gap a little bit, and I think that we will. I think if we make it into the top 3, it's going to be much tighter. And I think play the way that we can play, I don't see any reason why we couldn't push Chelsea. So I think that does need to be the ambition, but ultimately top 3 is the next logical step, because that gives you the option for Champions League, and I think that's where we will be.
If you don't mind, Connor, just before we move on as well, we've talked quite a bit there. We've basically talked about playing squads there, haven't we, and how they compare. I also think with City, it's if you talk to Man City women fans, it's quite apparent, and Arsenal a little bit. Something's not right at those 2 clubs from a unity point of view. I don't think, between potentially not across the board, but I think there's pockets of discontent with managers and players. Is the impression that I get. Quite clearly at City with all of those players going. And if you listen to things that Lucy Bronze was potentially saying after she had a couple after the Euro final win. It wasn't a happy place there. And similarly at Arsenal, you look at all of the players they've tried to get in and they've not got them. Now, I know if it's hard to say no, perhaps if a Barcelona or a Chelsea come knocking, but I think some of these players have chosen those clubs to sit on the bench over going to an Arsenal side that they could play for. I never get the impression, and we know as Man United fans, we don't pretend, there's been discontent in the men's side with the managers. It's quite obvious. We've not lied and said there isn't. I think we have a unified squad and coaching staff. And I think that's incredibly important, because it's not always just about having the best individual players all of the time. It's about being a unit. And I think it was El Capitano said in her Man United, it was on the social, she talked about how would you describe the team? And she said energetic, and she said together. She said we're together. And then they asked her to describe Mark, and she said the same 3 words: we're together. And I think there was rumblings coming out of our other two immediate competitors that all is not well from a harmony point of view, if that makes sense. I don't get that impression from us. There might be disharmony between what fans are expecting and what fans want, but from the players in the squad, I think they're tight. I think they're in this together, and that could also be the difference.
On that point, I 100% agree with Charlie. I was in Toulouse, and you saw the girls on the Wednesday after the PSG game, and there was the elder group who were doing like the touristy bits, and then there was the younger group who were just having lunch and TikToking and stuff like that. But Charlie's right; it's that word togetherness, and even before the game started, they were all sat together. There was no one away from the team. It was all of them sat together. And I think it's huge that we've got this squad now. And I think they are going to fight for each other. I think that's hugely important.
Oh, I'd agree with that. And obviously, everyone's got their contacts in this game. It depends who you believe, but I believe that the things that I've been told about specifically about City, obviously Arsenal as well. There's definitely unrest there. There's something not right in either of those teams, and you might see it this season. Someone made a comment earlier about the players that City have lost. John here, remember City have lost White, Bronze, Stanway, and Weir as well. Who are they playing? And Walsh to potentially come as well. Who are they playing in midfield? It's. I'm not saying they've got a bad squad, but I think going back to the original question that started this whole conversation, how does our squad stack up after the transfers compared to our 3 rivals? You could argue Spurs, throw them into the mix, I guess. But looking at the traditional top 3, I think we're right in there, and I think this is a big chance for top 3, as was last season as well.
I just wanted to add to that, because we talk about Chelsea, right? So who's Chelsea's best player?
How long have you got?
Sam Kerr.
Sam Kerr. But if Russo hits the green touch, but the blue touch paper rather, like she has done, she's been an absolute rocket during the Euros, scored 4 off the bench. We just saw her score again for the Lionesses this week. There's nothing to say that she couldn't start to hit those sort of heights if she's doing that. So I think that the word I would use for us is potential. There's a lot of potential in ours, and I don't think we necessarily see potential in Arsenal and City, and even really Chelsea. They're just expected, and I think potential, if we realise it, we could go a lot further than people think.
Yeah, it's going to depend on a lot of things, and it kind of ties me into the big question. It was centerpiece on the thumbnail today, because I think this is the thing this season. It's top 3. A lot of people are saying it's top 3 or bust. That's why I put it in the title. That's why it's on the thumbnail. But obviously, everyone's going to have their say on this. I want to get your thoughts in the comments as well on this, because it does feel a little bit like that. I don't buy into that if we don't get it, it's a complete failure, get Skinner out, all of that kind of thing. I don't buy into that at all, because I think for me, it depends on circumstance. If we have a massive injury crisis and we drop off a bit, can you really look at that as a failure? If we miss out by a point, but we've beaten Arsenal and City throughout the season, but we miss out just by a point and we've won a load of games, is that a failure? So I think it's perspective by the end of it. But I want to come to each of you first, because I've got a follow-up question to this afterwards. But as a club, Charlie, is this season riding on top 3, or can the season still be a success without getting top 3?
I think I think the most important thing is getting top 3. I think that has to be number one priority. Mostly because as the women's game is growing, like we're hearing some of the figures, aren't we, around transfers, and there's a lot more movement now for players in contract as well. And I think the Champions League is a huge selling point. So I do think in order to be competitive and to be competitive long term, it's something we do probably have to be able to offer. I think probably, and again, I have no inside knowledge here, but within the club, that's what they'll be aiming for. I would think that's got to be their priorities, to get the top 3. And perhaps internally, they wouldn't be happy if they didn't. The thing about the WSL is it's such a short season. I think someone said, like, I think Deborah said earlier, but it's such a short season. If you lose a game or 2, that's it. You're out of it. So there's so much riding on every single game. But I do think that's got to be the number one priority. In order for us to continue to grow and to become more competitive, we're going to have to be able to offer that. To keep our best players, which is, someone just said earlier, we've kept our best players, which is really important.
That's going to be a follow-up question. Just throwing out there about the players in particular.
But I do think that's got to be the priority. It has to be.
I don't know about a failure. I don't like the word failure.
Yeah, I don't necessarily mean to be a failure if we don't.
Yeah.
But I just think it still has
to be. It's a
to
negative word, Connor, and I'm not a fan of negativity, as you well know. I prefer a positive aura. I think I've already answered this question. I don't think necessarily that not finishing top 3 is a failure. There's too many variables around it with what's going on. There's this chance that we could potentially finish top 3. And I think we probably will. But I don't think it is going to be a failure at all, no. I think if we finish 4th, but we're showing that we're doing better against some of these teams, then I don't really see the problem. What I want to see is a free score in Manchester United. I want to see us in a position where we're not struggling to put our goals away. So really, that's what I'm after. I just want to see us improving on the things that we didn't do last year. So I want to see less silly mistakes at the back that cause us problems. And I want to see more balls going in the goal rather than elsewhere or being passed around and cleared. So for me, that would be success. And hopefully we'll do that more times than they do. If we do those 2 things, we're going to win matches. And if we win matches, then we win the league.
I agree with both Charlie and Barry. I think Champions League is something that will attract the better players to the club. I think, Champions League attracts the stars to all the clubs. I think we can't look past that. But I think Barry hit one point I'm adamant, and I absolutely agree with, is that I don't think we score enough goals. And that might be the one reason we don't get in the top 3. We're not ruthless enough in front of goal. And I know, we can talk about Leslie scoring 20, but let's get her into double figures. Let's get there and then go on to the next lot. But we're going to rely too much on Leslie, I think. And I think, she can carry the weight on her shoulders. She's a great player. She's, along with her and Tooney, a lot's going to ride on this season. I think a lot of the other players will play big parts, but I think a lot of the fans are going to put a lot on their shoulders because of what they did in the Euros. And let's face it, I mean, Charlie was at a lot of the England games when Tooney came on and Leslie came on. They changed the game. And I think, rightly or wrongly, a lot of United fans are going to be doing the same for us when they start. If Leslie only scores 1 but misses 3, a lot of people are going to go, we should have won that 3-0 instead of 1-0. So I won't necessarily see top 3. If we don't get top 3 as a failure, I just want to, Barry and I keep going along the same sort of route here. I guess that's because we're twins. Is that we want to see a progression, score more goals. And I know it's something that the manager wants. We know it's something that the fans want. we're all at games last season where we're winning 1-0, but for the last 10 minutes, we were all so uncomfortable because the other team were taking chances and we couldn't seem to get there enough. So, do I want Champions League? Yes, we all want Champions Leagues. I want to go on Euro ways. However, I think the other teams will outscore us, and I think that's potentially where we might come short.
No, I tend to agree with the points made. I want to put another spin on this, and obviously, Barry, I know you want to jump in on a comment here because, as a host, I've got to try and be semi-neutral on my kind of opinions. And Paul's talking here. We talk about progression being acceptable. We've finished fourth for the last 2 seasons. Surely progression in its basic form is third. I do agree. To be fair, I think if you're talking about progression as a whole, progression only goes one way. But like I said, there's circumstances. And I want to spin it back to you, Barry, with my original question in terms of if we don't get it, can the season be deemed as a success? Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen in the season. It's a long season. So many things can happen. But as we're looking to the season now, 5 days out from the season, if we're sat here in May and we've not got it, can we really sit there and go, that was a success and we've progressed? Obviously, it depends on the playing style and all different types of things. But I know you wanted to answer this one direct.
Well, yeah, because there's so many. Again, I'm going to use the word that John enjoyed just a moment ago. There's so many variables to what progression is. It depends on what you want to measure progression by. You can say progression is third. Of course, in league positions, it would be. But you could argue we could get more points than we got last season and still finish fourth because the other 3 teams ahead of us, whoever they might be, might have done better too. Well, that's progression because we got more points. We could score more goals. We've just had that discussion. That's progression because we're scoring more than we were before. We could concede less. Mary could win the Golden Glove. Leslie could win the Golden Boot. Leon, anyone could win the Golden Boot. So I just think there's too many ways. And this is the problem. This is where you end up having all of these debates and all of these sorts of things because progression can be measured in far too many different ways. And as with anything, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and so is progression. Just look at the men's team, how many arguments there were about whether we were progressing under Solskjaer. And they were saying no, and yet we finished 4th, 3rd, 2nd. So if you want to progress basic form is where you finish on the league, then he shouldn't have been getting such a hard time. But yet there were sections of the fan base that were doing that. So, I just kind of wanted to point out on that. Yes, in its basic form, you could use that, but we have to be 100% clear. There's a million different things. We can make it to a Conti Cup final, which we've never done before. We can make it to the FA Cup final, which we haven't done before. That's progression. So it just depends on what you want to measure it by. And if you're insisting on just doing it by the league, that feels a little bit unfair because there's lots of different areas that we could progress in.
Can I just pick up on the point you made about finishing 4th in the last 2 seasons? They were under very different circumstances. One of them was under COVID rules where there was no fans in the ground. And we had an absolute, backlog of injuries. Tobin was out when she played. Leah was out for a large majority of it. We had lots of players out. So actually finishing 4th that season, considering where we could have been, actually, I saw that as a progression. Last season, was it a progression? Yeah, because it was a new manager who'd just come in late into the start of the season. He didn't have a transfer window until January. And there was for me, he took a squad and he progressed them to the way he wants them to play. So, yeah, I think progression is in the eye of the beholder. What we all see is different. We all want to see different things from the team to see that progression. Look, I want to see Leslie score lots of goals. That for me is a progression. So we all have different aspects of what we want to see. I think it's the last 2 seasons, I wouldn't say have been a failure. I would say there's been that progression. However, now we need to go on for the next level of progression.
No, I'd agree with that. And Charlie, I want you to have your say on this as well, because I'm a little bit torn. And I like the fact that I'm torn because, as Barry said, it depends on what you deem as success. If your success for next season, in your eyes as a Man United fan, is that we score more goals than we did last year, we might do that, but we might come 4th. If it's the points tally, we might get that and still not get top 3. So I think it depends on how you measure it. And as Paul has kind of counter to that, the league is and it is in my eyes personally, but other people like cup runs, other people measured. It depends for me, as Barry said, what you measure as success. But Charlie, I want you to have your kind of say on this into is it? I guess it's that question again. Is it? Can we deem it as a success if we don't? With the signings we've made, he's been back this summer. We've got a good squad anyway. We've got 4. How many Lioness winners? 4. Euro winners coming back now. I don't know. It's a tough debate, and that's why I like this this little conversation we brought up.
Yeah, for me, with my overly emotional fan hat on, then I will probably be stood next to you 3 this season, crying and moaning about not getting top 3 if we don't get it because of how important Champions League is. But you're quite Barry's quite right. If we get another 8 points, so what were we short this time? 5 points in goal difference, I think. If we get another 8 points, that's another 3 or 4 wins, isn't it? If that happens and you don't get top 3, then what can you do? What can you do? And the thing is, you can control the controllables. Mark can control how he's training them, how he's preparing them, and the in-game management. Unfortunately, we can't control, apart from in our games against them, what City, Arsenal and Chelsea are doing. Somebody just spoke about Tottenham. I think they'll be there and thereabouts for a bit, but then they'll tail off, as they tend to do because they don't score enough goals. But yeah, if we get another 8 or 9 points and we score another 10 to 15 goals and we still don't get it, it's just tough, isn't it? And it all comes down to how few games there are in the season. But my instincts will always be to say, yes, it is. We have to get Champions League. We're Man United. That's what needs to be happening. And just with the way the coefficient is going as well, I'm always conscious of that as well. The way the coefficient is going in the Women's Champions League for English sides, it is not great. It's going to be harder and harder to get into it. City have already let the side down, haven't they? If Chelsea and Arsenal can't, what a surprise there. If Chelsea and Arsenal can't do the business, it's just going to get tougher and tougher for that to happen. And if it becomes just to the top 2 again, what a nightmare that could potentially be. So I just think for longevity and for progression in that regard, for me, it's dead important. But that's my emotional response. I completely get what Mark and Barry are saying, and I can be reasoned with. But I always have an emotional response to these things. So yes, Champions League must happen.
I think the expectation is always going to be high. You can't. The expectation with United is huge. You look at the beginning of the men's season when Eric Ten Hag came, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, we've got a proper manager." We lose to Brighton, we lose to Brentford, and everyone thought the wheels had come off. Now look, we've gone 4 unbeaten. With Mark, don't. Oh, no. Anyway, back to point. Imagine the worst case scenario: we lose on Saturday. Everyone is then going, well, what's happening? Every United fan will always have this huge expectation of we're going to win it. Look, I want Champions League. I do. I want United Champions League, but we've got to get there. And let's score more goals. Let's get more points on the board. Let's do it that way. Will it help in the long run to getting better players in? Yeah, of course it will. However, I don't see it if we don't get it. It's a great conversational point, and it's one that you can have all season, because depending on where we are, for me, Champions League is the pinnacle. But I don't care whether we win the Conti Cup or the FA Cup or the Rumbelows League Cup. I couldn't care. Let's win something, and let's just enjoy it.
These were the days, the Rumbelow League Cup. But I just want to say,
sorry, I'm not old. I remember the Rumbelows League Cup.
Yeah, me too. But I don't want to argue with Paul, because that just gets a bit dull and boring after a while. But I just wanted to echo basically what Mark said there, which is that we all want it. We all want top 3. We're not sitting here going that we don't want it. We must stay 4th. We absolutely want it. The problem is that you have to measure it objectively and not emotionally. And that's the problem. We measure it emotionally, and then all of a sudden we get ourselves all upset about it. In the cold light of day, when we sit and think about it, you realise actually it's not so bad. And the real thing that I wanted to interrupt for was to go, what sort of saying is bread and butter anymore? It makes sense to me. The leagues are bread and butter. I can't remember the last time I had bread and butter. What is this? It makes no sense as a saying. The leagues are bread and butter. Why can't it be our coq au vin or our, ribeye steak? Why's it got to be bread and butter? He was just sitting there eating bread and butter.
Nothing wrong with that, with a bit of eggs or something like that.
As long as you don't eat it with a knife and fork, Connor, I'm not bothered.
I knew that I'd come back around at some point. Right, I want to move this on because I've got quite a few more questions to get through in the next kind of 20 minutes or so, if we can possibly do it. I want to ask you each a question off the back of that from a player's point of view. I want to try and keep this a little bit brief before we look at other things as well. We spoke about, is it make or break or Champions League or bust as a club as a whole? I want to ask you from a player's point of view. You mentioned a couple on whoever it is, Tooney maybe. Is it make or break for some of these players if we don't get Champions League next year? Charlie, I'll come to you first on that
one. I think Tooney stays regardless. I think regardless of what happens. I think for other players potentially, like there are already clubs sniffing around Russo, aren't there? And obviously Honour as well. What I really hope is come Christmas that we've got some lovely little press releases on Manchester United Women Instagram with them holding a cheeky shirt with Mark's little happy, not this Mark, other Mark's little happy hamster face. Really pleased. But yeah, and this again is another reason why I'm so like Champions League driven. Like I'm not going to storm the pitch and start kicking and screaming if they don't make it. I'm not that bonkers. I'll wait till I get home or in the car. But that's another thing we just have to be mindful of. Like I think we've done really well, not keeping hold like they don't want to be there, like they're under arrest. They're not. They're staying by choice. But it's about keeping those players. You don't want to become a selling club, do you? I suppose. But yes, it will be. Players have aspirations. Like Russo's smelt victory now at the highest level. She's going to be wanting silverware. That's what they play football for, because they want to win. So as long as we can, it's like someone said, if you can show progression in whatever form that might be. So Barry talked about, didn't he? Get into a final and experiencing what that's like. That's showing progression, isn't it? So as long as they can see, like Russo's not ancient, as long as they can see that there is a plan there and there's a direction and there is a plan B if things aren't going well, I would hope they would stay, because you don't get success literally overnight. And they are part of it as well. I don't really like this mentality of, oh, I'm going somewhere else because you haven't won everything. You're part of it. You're part of the team. We need you all to do your bit as well. So yes and no. Yeah and no.
That's a fair answer. Lanza, just very quickly on your point for Barry and Mark jump in. I'd keep an eye on the world record transfer fee. I think that's going to get broken not once, maybe twice in the next 2 days, and not just broken. I think it could get absolutely smashed. So I'd keep an eye on some of the fees banded about. Barry, very briefly, and obviously Mark for yourself as well. Is it make or break for some players? Do you think? Obviously, we don't know. We're not in the players' minds, but do you think it is for some of those?
Well, I think it could be, and I don't necessarily. I agree with most of what Charlie said there about how the players, you have to question them as well and say, well, you were part of this. But I think it's everybody's dream, isn't it, to want to play in the biggest competition. I think if you went and asked Tooney, Russo, any of the players really that have been Man United fans, who would you rather play in the Champions League with, Manchester United or, insert other team here? And with the exception of maybe two, they'd all say Manchester United, I reckon, because, they've got that affinity with the club. So I do feel like that's something they would want to do. But then equally, not everybody's going to be Alan Shearer. Not everybody's going to go, no, I'm quite happy to settle for the mediocrity of Newcastle. I don't need to come to you, Sir Alex. I don't need these medals. Not everybody's going to be willing to do that. So I just kind of feel that it might be, and we can't hold them necessarily, but I totally agree with Charlie that they must look and see what's being built here. And I think there is something much more to work for. I mean, a quick example, I remember talking to my friend who's a Leicester fan when they won the league, and he was going, I think Vardy's going to go now because he's got a bigger profile. And I'm like, well, why would he want to? He's got Champions League for the first time with a club that he's helped to build. I feel like you would get more pleasure out of winning it through building something than you do by just going to somewhere where you're expected to compete and to win those sorts of things. So, yeah, no, it's fun. I don't have many of them, Deborah. I can count them on one hand. So there we go. But yeah, so it might be make and break, and it's up to them really at the end of the day. But what I would say is that you look at Jackie and what she's put out in the interview, that brilliantly worded answer. She's happy at Manchester United, so it's not like we're making people upset. We haven't gone down the Anthony route where people are kicking and screaming wanting to leave the club. So that's because we're together, innit, Charlie?
So look, I think Tooney, for me, has shown the most dedication to the club than probably most people would have expected. She signed a long-term contract halfway through a building process, and I actually admire that, because for me, I think out of most of our players, I think she's got the potential to be even better than she is. I think Leslie's, for me, Leslie's great, and I like watching Leslie. I think she's still the unfinished article. I think there's some stuff you can work with Leslie. So do I think most, we all know there's a contract being put in front of Leslie. We all know there's a contract being put in front of Jackie. We know those things. Is it make or break for those players? Look, if we get off to the season and win every game between now and Christmas, I think they'll be signing long-term contracts. However, if we don't get such a good start and everything goes backwards, then would you blame them for leaving? I think, most of these players want to play in the biggest competition. However, some of them might not. So, look, I think we've got to enjoy it and see where it goes, for me anyway. And I admire Tooney for signing a long-term deal. I think she's put her money where her mouth is, and she's got to now deliver it on a constant basis.
No, I'd agree with that. I think we all said that at the time. That I was surprised at the length, certainly of the deal that she'd signed, especially at that point of the season where it wasn't going great back then. Just very quickly, I have put a poll in the chat because I love a poll on a YouTube video. Simple question: where are United going to finish? And I've given you 3 options and then another one option. Third place is way out in front at the moment as well. So if you think other, please let us know which position you think. I've put second, third, and fourth because I don't think it's going to be anything other than that. I'd be very surprised if it is. But if you have voted other, let us know which one or which position you think that would be as well. Yeah, I agree, John. Maybe some City players agreed to leave this summer before Christmas when things weren't going great, potentially. I think what people forget, that there are some transfers that come out of nowhere that are done in a couple of weeks, but a lot of transfers are so far in advance that people just don't see that side of things. And Ian is right if Jackie scores. I agree with that. First place, eh? Well, if we come back to it, you will be hailed a Wolf United genius if that comes true. Because I don't think anyone at the moment can see past Chelsea. Right, I want to get to a couple of kind of little quick fiery questions. I'm nicking this off Man United Women Extra on Twitter, so make sure you go and reply to them as well with your answers. So I want to talk top scorer, player of the season, best sign, and breakthrough talent. We're going to go through each of these in a kind of short little segment. I don't think there's going to be too many disagreements for the first one, but I want each of you and everyone in the comments as well, get your thoughts on this one. Top scorer for next season. Is there anybody other than Alessia Russo for this one?
Yeah, Tooney.
Interesting. I wasn't expecting Tooney's name, to be fair.
I did think that. I thought she's potentially the one. She's the one who could take the crown, perhaps. She wasn't far off, was she? 7 last season. Galton with 8.
Mary
Earp. Yes, Mary.
She's going to bang out some from goal kicks. She's annoyed with Zellum getting all the credit for corners. Russo's the one that's obvious, but I'm just going to put it out there. I'd like it to be Paris. I'd love her to go out there and just bang out 15 goals and smash the WSL.
No, I'd agree. There's a lot of, as I expected, there's a lot of Russo shouts.
I think it'll be extremely close between the two of them, but I think Tooney might just edge it.
No, I'd agree with that one. Garcia and Galton could be outsiders. Galton wasn't far off Russo last season, so I wouldn't put it past her. Especially if she's starting every game with a more fluid front line that we're going to see this season. Russo, Garcia, Russo, Garcia, Paris. Leon will score a few. A lot of people are sleeping on Leon.
So what I'm getting from this is basically anyone in the front line.
Connor, you just said a lot of people are sleeping on Leon. I'm fairly certain at the start of the Euros you said a lot of people are sleeping on Norway. So I don't fully, I don't always fully trust your.
Well, do you disagree? Do you not think?
Oh I think I'm gonna answer. She's gonna be my answer to a question shortly. I think.
Oh, okay.
Potentially.
Yeah. Well, we'll get back to that one in a second. There was a few people saying top assists as well. I know that was on the tweet. If anyone wants to jump on that top assists, Lanza's jumped in already. Tooney. Is it anyone other than Tooney for this one?
Tooney, top assist, top goal scorer for Mark. Yes.
Zelly.
Just quickly.
You've got to throw Zelly in there.
Just quickly, Mark.
Maya Le Tissier.
Potentially.
She got a few more balls like she was doing in the pre-season.
I want to know from yourself, Mark. You said Tooney for top goal scorer, and obviously you mentioned her for top assist. I know you mentioned Zellum. How many do you think Tooney's getting, and if she's becoming top scorer this season? No, well, I'm not expecting an exact number, but obviously I'm assuming double figures.
I think Tooney, she's added goals to a game, and I think it's taken. Some of the best midfielders. It took time, and he added the goals to the game. I think Tooney's getting into 12, maybe 12 to 15 this season.
Yes. That'd be lovely.
That'd be great.
So take the average on that one then, Mark. That's about 13 and a half. 13 and a half.
Half is a disallowed goal, but it was not given.
Ghost goal.
A lot of shouts for Tooney. Ella Cartoon. I like that. Top assist will be Tooney. Deborah's coming with a nice one there. Top assist will be Martha Harris. I think that. No. I don't think so on that one. Barry with a bold shout, Maya on her for assists. I don't know. I'd be amazed if they're up there with assists. I think when you've got a player like Tooney who's going to play pretty much every game, I'll be amazed if somebody gets past her. Leads on nicely then. So player of the season, if you want to throw a name out there.
It's like a broken record. I think Tooney will be our player of the season. I really do. She's not shine. I feel like sometimes when I knew we were going to be asked that question, my brain immediately went to someone shiny and new. I think it sometimes does, doesn't it? You just think of new players, but I just feel like if Mark's right and Tooney's going to be our top goal scorer, and everyone else is right and she's going to be our top assister, I don't know if I could look much further than her.
Yeah, initially my head went to Maya. However, if you're giving your player of the season to a defender, something has drastically gone wrong. So I'm now gone back to Tooney or Zelly.
Yes.
I wonder if we've underestimated the power of Jackie Groden potentially. We've spoken a lot about her here, but she could get some assists. I mean, I don't think she's going to take the top goal scorer bit anytime soon. We'll all make do with just one for the moment. But I think certainly for a player of the season, I'd be absolutely delighted to see her go out there and prove to everybody what she's got in the club jersey. So, yeah, maybe. Just to be different. Either that or Rachel Williams.
There's a lot of interest in shit. I mean, Ellie, in response to you won't be able to say that for the next one because she's not a new signing, unfortunately. But I think player of the season is a tough one because, like Mark, you said it, if you're picking a defender, something's probably gone wrong because we'd like to think that we shouldn't be defending too much, particularly in the games against the teams in the bottom half. So, but I just think Honor is that good that she will be on for player of the season again. Because I just think she's that good. She's instrumental defensively and going forward. But I think it's hard to look past Tooney and Russo as well. If Russo's top scorer, if Russo can get to 15 WSL goals, for example, she's going to be player of the season because that will likely be what gets us into Champions League spots.
I also think...
Sorry, Mark, go on.
I also think you can throw probably a notable mention in there for Leah.
Yeah.
I think actually most of the if the team play the way we all hope they're going to play, actually you can probably throw a blanket on 7 or 8 of them and go, any one of them could be our player of the season. And I agree with you, Connor. It's such a difficult question to answer because it's an unknown, to use the word of the night, it's an unknown variable right now.
I was just going to add what Sang said basically there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I mean, I see why people say having a defender would be, as your player of the season, would be bad. I would argue it's if the goalkeeper gets it, that you definitely had a bad one. The defender could literally be that they're just stopping absolutely every attack because you're going to get them. So, it could still be a potentially good thing if someone like Maya Le Tissier got it, if she's winning the ball back and setting us off on these attacks. Or, for example, if she got the most assists.
No, agreed. Someone, Norma's just put a comment here. No one's mentioned Bo Russo. We've not spoken about her once throughout this whole show, which is interesting because a lot of people would tell you the talent that she's got. I personally don't think she's going to play more than. I'm not going to put a number on it now, but I don't think she's going to play that much. Personally, I just think we've got that much. She's not getting in ahead of Tooney. She's not getting ahead of Zellum. So there's only one other spot, and you'd probably pick Jackie or Ladd in that scenario. So where does she play? I think is the question there. So that's probably why nobody's mentioned Bo Russo.
I'll tell you something. If she wants to get her international spot back, she is going to need to put in that sort of performance player of the match all the time to get herself into both the club team and the international team. So, it's not a bad shout at all, really.
Yeah, Bo Russo's not favoured by my. Yeah, I think that's evident by the playing time. I think you could argue that for a couple of players. If you're not playing, clearly the manager doesn't want you in the 11 or coming off the bench that often. I think that's pretty obvious. Yeah, Grielli, love how. Get me words out now. Loving how we got the most depth this season. A couple of months ago, we were saying who are we going to sign and that kind of thing. Leads us very nicely then. Best signing. Now, obviously, this time again, all of this is subjective because time's only going to tell. Who's going to be the best signing and that kind of thing. But as of now, looking ahead to the season, who you think when we come to do the review show, back end of May, and we watch this video back, who are we going to say is the best signing?
I'm not going to say Maya because I feel like a few people might say her. I'm kind of stuck between two. I feel like I think I said before, didn't we? We were doing a watch along that I feel like Leon is going to come in and change games. Like she's going to be incredibly important in that regard, and therefore, like she'll be really important. But I also, and it's purely because she captained France the other day. I just feel like Tunkara is going to come in and shore up the defence. Like she's captaining France. So I have very high hopes for her as well. I wonder if maybe I picked those two because they're a little bit older, a little bit more experienced. They're both like Leon's won things, so I'm expecting them. They should be coming in and hitting the ground running, I think.
I was thinking Tunkara because again, it just came down to that whole header that she had where she just went through everybody. I think she's going to bring a bit of bite to the team. I really do. And, she's not going to take any prisoners and just keep going. So, yeah, I think Tunkara's a good shout. The honest truth is, Connor, it could be any one of the 7. This is such a difficult game to play. If I'd have thought this through, I'd have had a little roulette wheel made and we could just span the wheel and see which one it landed on. But, yeah, I'll go with Tunkara, but I hope it's Paris.
Yeah, I think the obvious answer most people would go for is Maya. I think Tunkara is a great shout. She's a defender that I think we need someone who will just clear out even your own players to get a ball. I love that. I really do. I love that kind of defending. So Tunkara for me is a great shout. I think there's going to be a huge weight on Lucia Garcia's shoulders, and I hope Mark brings her in slowly up to the signing of the WSL. But I agree, Paris and for me, Adriana Leon, WSL experience, one of those two, maybe throw Tunkara in there as well, but Paris or Leon for me.
I've left that comment on screen just very briefly. I don't know whether Charlie Mark, you mentioned Tunkara there. If you want to answer that question, will she play every game though? Do you think? That's a reference to Tunkara.
I think so.
Yeah, I think she starts.
I imagine so. Yeah,
she starts Saturday. No, without a doubt.
No, I'd agree with that. And quite a lot of shouts there for different players. I was just reading through the comments as you guys were speaking there. A mixture. Ian's gone for a cop out and just said everybody, which
is Ian.
I think if you can go down that route because you can make a case for any of them. I think.
I mean, ironically, everyone except for Tunkara.
It's because he couldn't spell a name. That's why.
It's all right. Neither could John, but he had a go.
Speaking of an outsider shout in terms of best signing, I think this wins it from a different standpoint. Best signing could be Polly Bank. I agree. I think I don't know the ins and outs of United too well, but I think if she has had an influence on some of the deals we've made this summer, and we know going into next year as well, some of the deals potentially getting over the line, that could be instrumental as well because it's the first of that kind that we've kind of implemented in the club as well.
There are huge changes going on behind the scenes at the club, both in the offices, both in the way the team are being progressed, the team and the togetherness. There are huge changes, and Debs has said it there. I think, even Ian's admitted that he can't spell Tunkara, by the way. So, I mean, that's one for me. I think all the signings we've brought in many ways, just help progress that squad. So you can, as Barry said and Charlie said, we can make a case for every single one of them to be the best signing because they're all coming in to do different jobs. Rachel Williams, will she get much playing time? Look, I don't know, but she's coming in to help the young kids. That's her role. So we can make a case for every single one of the new signings for me.
No, I'd agree with that. I just very quickly, Sandy, welcome to the chat.
I think the best signing is going to be when you do the ball.
I'm not. That's not a prize, by the way. And the people will be disappointed, I'm sure, for the predictions league. We released the prizes the other night. There is not going to be a signed football from me. You will be glad to know, I'm sure. And Sandy, welcome to chat. I've not seen your name before, and we will win the league. I like it. I like that.
Can I just say, I think Ellie's comment, Millie's back, is like a new signing. Absolutely, Ellie. I completely agree with that.
No, 100%. And there was a question, I think, from Lanzel, Tunkara, and who at centre back. It's got to be Millie, isn't it? We had this the show last week when we talked about our best 11. It's got to be Millie in there. And in answer to your question, Peter, when did we do the show? Was it last? It was last week. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah.
I think it was last Monday where we did a show talking about who fits in where, and you'll see our best back four in there. I've added some chapters to the video as well, so you can skip to that bit if you just want to see that bit. Sorry to disappoint, Mickey. Nobody wants to sign football from me. That only applies to two people on the channel, to two people on the panel, though.
Who's you talking about, Barry? Please tell me.
Disgraceful. John, if you're on about the result for the women's game against Birmingham, I think it was called off.
Yeah, it was.
I don't think that game happened. So, just last quickfire one then, and I could phrase this in two different ways, but I'm going to go with what was on the original tweet. Breakthrough talent this year. That could be a number of people. That could be players on the outside that have not had some game time yet and that are going to come into the side and kind of hit the ground running. Could be a dev that you've seen or a younger player that could come into the side. Is there anyone you think that's going to be the breakthrough this year?
I'm going to go for this one. Again, because in my head, you can't go for anyone over 25. It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to go for Maya Le Tissier breakthrough. Not that like she's not a good player, but I think it's different doing it for Man United than it is for Brighton. I think this is her year. I don't feel like Clinton will quite play enough. I'm not sure. Oh, Deborah disagrees. Then I will change my opinion.
A lot of people disagree.
She is queen. I don't know if I think Clinton will play enough for that to happen. I don't know what you classify as a breakout. What do you mean? Maybe I've got this wrong.
I think someone who's not played enough. So I wouldn't say Maya purely because she's played a lot in the WSL already. It's not really a new name into the side, is it? I'm thinking more of an outsider. Doesn't really play a lot. That's going to break into the team this year and surprise people. I guess is what you class as a breakthrough player.
No one.
Yeah, my answer was I was going to say Nikita Paris because she had such a bad season at Arsenal last year. She's coming to us and she's going to absolutely come through it. So I was going to say Keats.
Can I say then, I don't think Garcia is going to start to begin with. I don't think. So I think it could be her. I think it could be Lucia Garcia, if that's how you say it.
I think Grace is the obvious answer that everybody would be expected to give if you're not allowed Maya due to age and playing in the WSL as much as she has. I think when you look at breakout, though, I remember sort of last season that I felt like this was going to be Alessia Russo's breakout season. And actually, she's only 23. We forget that. And she's come along and she's performed all right, but she hasn't necessarily set the world on fire. I genuinely believe this season is the season because, let's be honest, if it is her last season at Manchester United and she doesn't sign her deal, this is her year to put herself in the shop window because she wants all the big clubs to be after her if she's not wanting to sign for United. But that could have a wonderful after effect of that. Actually, if she goes off and has this breakout season and scores double figures in goals and sets up things and, you know, turns into the new Sam Kerr, we get the Champions League, at which point she goes, where's that signature you required? And she signs it, and then off we go and dominate for the next 20 odd years because that's what we do.
I like that. That was a passionate end. I don't know how I can follow that. Yes, I don't know. I was going to say Clinton. The devs that I was going to say have gone out on loan. So, you know, I don't think there's anyone devs-wise. Mark, you've watched them more than I have, that you can maybe throw some shouts in there. But
I don't think a lot of the devs. I think the only way the devs get into the squad is Conte. They won't get in unless we've got a massive injury list. I can't see them breaking into the WSL squad. But I agree. I think Saf is one that you would all look at. Jess Simpson was one as well. Rebecca May, Tara Bourne. I know she's gone out on loan, but I mean, she's the one that if she wasn't on loan, I would have in the matchday squad anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Love Barry's excitement. And Sandy, I don't just see this your first time on the channel. This is what you get on this channel. You're going to get some weird conversations about pineapples on pizzas and all kinds of things, using cutlery with all kinds of burgers and things like that. That's a time.
That's just you. That's
no,
just
not.
you.
It's more than just me. They're just not. I've not found them yet. I've not found my kind. Yes, for those. But you'll get everything.
So very rightly not mentioned it in public.
I know, I do regret bringing it up in public, to be fair. Right, then, we'll look to wrap it up there. Sang, I do see you in the comments, by the way, and I'm going to talk about the predictions again a little bit later, but please drop us a message on Twitter, either tonight or tomorrow, because we have closed the prediction age entries, but we we will allow you in because we know you've shown an interest. Please, any of us, drop us a message on Twitter or any other means of contacting us.
So put your Twitter address here.
Anything like that. Yes, John, you've read my mind. So just before we wrap up and get to the poll result, the only problem is I can't actually see it. So if someone can see the poll result, can they let me know what the result was? Because it's disappeared on mine. So I don't actually know. The last time I checked, it was about 68% for third, about 10% for second, and 4% for fourth. And there was one person. Can someone mute your mic? Somebody had voted other. So whoever did vote other, please let us know what position you think we will finish.
Didn't James say first? Was it James?
I think it was.
It's me.
Flesh.
Oh, and Barry.
Was it you?
I clicked other.
First.
I clicked other because I've told you I've got an outside bet. I think we're going to win it this year.
I would be. Oh my gosh.
Charlie be on that pitch just behind her.
Oh my! I wouldn't do that. That's inappropriate. But I would be very, very excited.
I won't see it as a failure if we don't, but I just got,
Can
I've
you
got those
imagine,
vibes.
though?
I'm feeling it. Why
Imagine the scenes of that.
not? Imagine.
Oh my
Imagine all the people.
So
gosh. Oh,
I don't know
I'd
whether
cry.
anyone can find the poll. I can't find it. It's lost in
Yeah,
the.
so second is 31%, third is 59%, fourth is 7%, and other is 3%.
Interesting. So third place gets it in the majority, but let's see what the panel think very quickly. Let's go around the house. Charlie, where are we finishing next season?
I think we're finishing second next season.
Mark?
Third.
Barry's got first. Does that mean I'm going to have to say fourth just to be
No,
just to be different? Go on, Barry. Are you saying first? I'm assuming you are off the back of that.
First.
I think if we finish top of the league, something's gone very, very, very wrong at Chelsea.
Yeah, I agree.
Or we've just gone very, very, very right.
Right.
Red White Army.
Right.
God, United.
How many have you had tonight, Barry?
What do you reckon, Connor? What do you reckon?
I think third. I think I can't work out which team's going to drop out. It's going to be Arsenal, City. I agree. I think Chelsea are far. Yes, you could argue maybe some of our players stack up against theirs, but they're buying players for the bench that would get in any starting 11. Like they're taking.
I'm sick of them
really out of the rest
showing
of the
off. Ooh, look at all my £100 bills. Do you have those? I bet they have them.
So I'm going to go
I
third.
just feel like you've got to go into the season. And I think it's nice. We've had a really good transfer window. We've had a reasonable pre-season. We've played against some big teams and not embarrassed ourselves. I just think it's really nice to be able to go into the season and have a little bit of hope and optimism. And you know what? In 5 or 6 games' time, we might look at it like Charlie says. We might have lost a couple and we think, all right, well, it is only going to be top 3 that we're aiming for. But why not start the season with a little bit of hope and optimism? It's been a long time since we've been able to do that. So for me, I'm going to go with first and then cut my cloth accordingly should I need to. But why not?
We've got a Stan in the comments, and Charlie's singing us. Will you sing it, Charlie, if we win the league? Is that?
Oh yeah, and I'll do the dance and everything.
Will you spell it?
Oh, it'll be incredible.
I agree, John. We're definitely more. I remember doing my very first show on this channel, and everyone was so downbeat, just saying, "Oh, yeah, we're gonna drop to 6th and 7th this year, and this year we're talking about winning the league and everything." So we'll look at that. We'll look to wrap it up.
Can we just clarify? One of us is talking about winning the league. The other 3 are being a bit more sensible and being a bit more, Sorry, brother.
We're gonna win the league. We're gonna win the league. Now you're gonna believe.
Men and the women, double title.
Yes, that's a double.
I said that last January, like the January of this season when we were chasing top of the league.
Eric and Mark's tricky reds.
If we both win the league, we both win a cup. That's a quadruple, right?
Yes.
Right.
Now,
all right. There you go.
Simple maths problem.
I like that. I'm getting my hair cut this week, Sang. You'll be pleased to know. So hopefully the hairline score will go up a bit more on that one. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks for these 3 for coming on. We'll be back on Wednesday where we're actually going to put this debate to our rival fans. We've got Rob representing Chelsea. We've got Megan representing Arsenal. We've got Emma representing Man City. So make sure you tune in for that one. So we're going to put I'm going to put Barry's prediction to Rob and to see what his reaction is. Can
I pop on just to tell him it myself? Can I just jump in and just go off it? We're going to finish first and just see if he spontaneously combusts.
Some of the claims he said that he's going to bring up on that show, I'll be tune in for that one because he's going to come out with some wild predictions. Jennifer, I've not seen your name before as well. Thanks for dropping in. Make sure you're liking and subscribing as everyone else. I hope everyone's enjoyed. I've enjoyed another show with these 3. Like I said, so we'll be back on Wednesday with rival fans. We should be back on Thursday for a brief kind of special because we know Man United obviously playing on the men's side in the Europa League. And then Barry will be back on Friday with not 1 now, but 2 debutants to the channel. So we're looking forward to that one. Just before we wrap up very quickly, there was a comment just a second. I've just remembered, but I went to hit the outro then. I've just remembered. Yes, you can, John, because John Foster's blown our deadline out of the way with adding more people to the league. So yes, you can. Just drop us a message on Twitter if you Haven't got Twitter. I don't quite know how you're going to get in contact with us. Our details are on screen. Message one of us on Twitter to enter. We're going to push the deadline a little bit. But yeah, make sure it's soon because our spreadsheet is getting longer by the second, and me and Barry may just faint if we have to make any more
Honestly,
adjustments.
funny, there's more names on our spreadsheet than a Nottingham Forest transfer window.
And that's hard to do. So yeah, make sure if you are going to join, make sure it's either tonight or kind of tomorrow-ish if you can. Thanks to everyone in the comments. I see quite a few new faces today. Chris and Sandy, thanks for the subscribe as well. Mark, kettle's on, so you can go and enjoy your coffee or your tea, whatever you're.
He's going to have a tea. He's going to have a tea. Now you're going to believe.
Oh, crap. Right, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you all very soon.